work in our drawings. For this chapter's project, we're going to use the project template file. We're going to add 2 blocks into the file and make a third one to use in a later project. Open the project template file that you created earlier. I've put a copy of the project template file in this folder for you, or you can use your own. You should be using your own, but just refer to mine so that you can make sure that we're on par, that you've got everything the way it needs to be. Okay, so far in this, we created a new file. We used the regular template that we had. It has a title block in here for us to use. We've established and set up layers, changed some of the existing layers. We've created dimension styles. We've created text styles. So we're really building the base for our new drawing that we're going to create. So now we need to make some blocks, and we need to make sure we have blocks in here. Go to the Model tab. There shouldn't be anything in here right now. It should be a nice empty space. Open up the tool palette. Do that by pressing Ctrl and 3 at the same time. Go to the Architect tab. If you can't find it on here, that's okay. Remember, come down here to the bottom left, right-click, and all the tabs that are available to you will be listed. Find the architectural one, pick it, and it'll open up. Now we need to find the window block. This one right here. Except that's the metric. We're going to be working in imperial units. So scroll up, grab the imperial window, pick it, and insert it. There we go, it's in our file. This will insert the block from the tool palette and put it into our file. You can place it anywhere from now. Now let's do the same thing with the door. We want this door right here. Pick it and insert it. Okay, now we're going to use these 2 blocks in our template file much later on. We've added them to it. We can erase these, in fact, and they're still in the file. If you type in the insert command, click OK. Click on the arrow, and you can see here that we have the door and the window. And we can put them in our drawing. So they're here now. That's great. Now, we need to get the chair from our annotation example file. So go to the annotation file, pick it, open it up. Now we're going to W block out our chair. Pick the block that you want. So we select block because it's already in here. Find chair and find the folder you want to save it in. If you want to save it in your cloud, that's fine. If you want to save it in your chapter, go right ahead. Let's call it chair-project. That way we know it's the chair for our project. It's in inches, that's good. Click OK. All right, we exported this block from our file here. Now we can use it wherever we need to. Press Ctrl and Tab. That'll take you to our project template file. And remember, at the top of the screen, if you read it, it will tell you what file you're in. Now let's put this in our file. Insert, Enter, Browse, go to the proper folder, find the chair-project file, click Open. All we need to do now is insert this into our drawing. Now we've inserted our chair. Well, we want to make a change to it. So select, go to the block editor. We want all of this line work to be on layer 0. So make that change. Select everything, then go to your properties palette and change everything to layer 0. Once done, pick the close block editor button. Make sure to save the changes. And now you can erase it. Okay, we just saw 2 different ways to get blocks into our drawing. So that's fantastic. We pulled some in from our tool palette, and then we went to another file and essentially extracted the information out of it and put it into ours. Now let's make a new block. We're going to make a plant. So let's draw a circle. You can draw it anywhere on your screen. Give it a 6-inch radius. Offset that by 1 inch. There we go. Now let's draw a polyline from the center. Type in PL for polyline, or you can get all these commands up here in the Home tab in the ribbon. Start it from the center, hit F8 to go straight out. Let's go 3 feet. Turn off the ortho again, and just draw a short line, say 6 units, just about anywhere. Hit A for arc. Type in NEA for near, and we're going to drop it in right there. Now, type in MI for mirror, and mirror this block right there, about this line. Don't delete it, and there's a nice little leaf. Let's use another command that we've done in the past. That's the polar array. Select the objects. That's both of these sides of the leaf. Press Enter. Specify a center point, which is going to be the middle of this part. And then let's figure out how many we want to use on here. Let's see, right now there are 6 items. What happens if we do 3? Does that look okay? Let's go with 3. If that's the way you'd like it, close the array, and there we go. There's our plant. It's a nice big giant leafy plant. Let's make it into a block. So type in the word block, press Enter. Let's give it a name. Let's call it plant big leaf. Now let's pick our base point. We want to go to the center of our pot, and we want to make sure we've picked all of the objects. We want all of these into it. Set to inches, good preview. Okay. And there is our new plant. Let's erase it. And we can do a quick double check with the insert command to make sure we have our title block, chair, a door, big plant, and a window. Cancel out of there. And there we go. So now we've inserted blocks from 2 different sources, one the tool palette, one from another file, and we've created a new block. So we're getting close to having our template file ready and having all the tools set up so that we can create our drawing at the end. It's here to help us create construction documents. In order to do so, we have to create a geometric database or a model. It can be a group of either 2-dimensional lines or even in AutoCAD a 3D solid model. Once the modeling is complete, we have to annotate it to display it to others and to show them what its features are. Let's open up the mechanical example file. AutoCAD is organized into 2 different working environments or spaces to help us accomplish the creation of our documents. They're represented by model space and the paper space tabs, as seen here on the bottom of my screen. Sometimes these tabs can be hidden, appearing instead as buttons on the status bar at the bottom of the application window. So if you don't see these tabs, you can turn them on by right-clicking the buttons and clicking to turn them on. They should be right here, paper and model. Also, if you go to the options window, there is a layout element here in the display tab, and it says display layout and model tabs. If I turn that off, they go away. Let's turn them back on, and I suggest that you use them. Leave them turned on all the time. Typically, a model is composed of geometric objects, and it's created in a 3-dimensional space called model space. In AutoCAD LT, it's only a 2-dimensional model space, as we see here. A final layout of specific views and annotations, like text and dimensions and things, of the model will be created in a 2-dimensional space called paper space, or the layout tab. These spaces are accessible on 2 or more of the tabs near the bottom of the drawing area. We have model and layout. Working on the model tab, you will draw your model or your line work, and the subject of your model will be drawn at a 1-to-1 scale. So in the case here, this is drawn at 3 inches. So this little flywheel that will be constructed will actually be 3 inches wide. Each layout has a picture in it, or a frame. It's called a viewport. This viewport gives you a photograph of the model that's in model space. Think of it as a window peering into model space. Each layout viewport contains a view. It displays the model at a specific scale and orientation, and you can specify what those are. You can also specify which layers are visible in each layout viewport. After you finish arranging that layout, you can turn off the layers that contain the layout viewport objects. Alternatively, you can also set the viewport layers to a no print setting so that these rectangles or squares won't be visible when you print it out. In either case, the views are still visible. So the line work that it's showing, of our flywheel here, you'll still be able to see those when printed, but these big ugly squares, they won't be. That's really where your layer manager comes in play. We have the viewport layer, and it's set to not plot. These viewports are on that viewport layer. So when you go to print, you won't see these squares. If you want to see them, then that's okay too. But oftentimes you don't want them to be displayed. So very briefly here, model space contains the drawing geometry or the model. Paper space contains what will be printed out on paper. AutoCAD is more than just drawing lines and circles. It's a complex process that has been developed so that we can create complex designs. One of the keys to efficient CAD work is to organize your data. A model space is meant to be a 3-dimensional area in AutoCAD and a 2-dimensional area in AutoCAD LT where you can draw and create your design. Your design needs may not include 3-dimensional models, only 2-dimensionals, and that's fine. But regardless of how many dimensions your design requires, the model for it belongs in model space. Let's look at some examples. Open up the dimension example drawing. This is an example of a 2-dimensional model. Now go to model space. The only thing in here is the line work. If we do a zoom extents, that's all that's here. All of these layers are turned on and thawed, so we can see everything that's here. We have our line work. That's it. Now let's go to paper space, and you can pick any of these tabs. The only thing here are our dimensions. I can't pick any of the line work because they're in a viewport, so there's no line work here. This is a very simple example, but it's very clear. And sometimes the lines between model space and paper space can become blurred, and it's okay. So let's go and make a new layout tab. I'll show you how to do this. You come down to your tabs, right-click, and you can right-click on any of them and select the New Layout button. And it creates a new layout. It's right here. It puts it at the end, and it's called Layout 1. Click it to activate it. Now, when you create a new layout, a viewport is automatically generated, and it's created on the current layer. Well, let's move that to a viewport layer. That will let us manage the viewport. Now, one thing you can do, if you come down to a tab, let's look at this one that has all the dimensions on it, right-click on it, and we showed you how to do a new layout, but you can also copy a layout. If you hit Move or Copy, and select the Create a Copy option, let's move it to the end, and it called it Dimension 2. Now it literally made a copy of the Dimension tab. That's a great trick to use, especially if you have a title block already filled out. Any information that's in it, a viewport that's set to a specific scale, all of these things are very important, and it can save you a lot of time because many times we need to create a similar drawing, but yet is a little bit different. Once you're created a viewport, you can double-click inside that viewport to activate temporary model space. So now I'm working in model space, even though I'm in paper space. And you'll note that when I move my crosshairs out of that viewport, I just get the little arrowhead instead. I can't draw over here. I can only draw with what's in here, and it's in model space. I can't select these text objects. I can edit this drawing all that I want to, but I can't edit my text. Now the viewport is locked, as you can see here. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later on. But I'm now in temporary model space, or some people call it floating model space. To get out of it, I double click somewhere on the side, or these tab buttons right here, I can click and it will activate a viewport in my layout paper space tab. And if I click it again, it brings me back into paper space. Now when we're in a viewport, we can freeze certain items. Double click in the viewport to activate it. Pick the freeze, layer freeze, and let's freeze those center lines. So see, I don't need them. Okay, now let's say that we needed to make a drawing that showed just the outline of the bracket so that someone can go find their steel plate and cut it out for us. And then once that's cut out, we'll give it to someone else and they can burn in the holes for us. We can activate this viewport. We can freeze the holes, freeze the center lines, enter, go back to paper space, use the delete command or erase, and get rid of these dimensions that we don't need that show where the holes are. And with just a couple of clicks and a very quick copy, we've created two different drawings from the same drawing. That's what viewports can do for you. And that's why it's important to put your model in model space and your text or your annotations in paper space. Now I can click on one of these tabs, hold it, and I can drag it and I can reposition it in here, similar to using like a spreadsheet. So now I can quickly get to either tab. And I've created a whole new drawing, but I'm using the same exact line work. As we have discussed in several sections and chapters, model information goes into model space and annotations go in paper space. In order to annotate anything, we need to have the model visible in paper space. That's done through viewports. Think of a viewport as a window to model space or a photograph of that model that you can label. Since each viewport is its own photo, we can do anything we want to them, and they won't affect anything else, not the model nor the other viewports. You use those viewports to arrange the views of your drawing on a sheet. You can move and resize layout viewports, and you can use the different layout viewports to have more control over the display of your drawings. For example, you can freeze certain layers in one layout viewport without affecting the others. Let's open up the ice rink example file. Let's create a new layout tab. Right-click, and then select New Layout Option here. And it called it Layout 2. To change its name, you can right-click on the tab and pick the Rename option. Let's call it Rinks. Press Enter. Now we know which one we're working with. When a new tab is made, a default viewport is always created. You can use that one if you'd like, or you can create one from scratch. We're going to use this one, but then we'll make an additional viewport later on, because you can make many different viewports. A viewport is an object just like anything else. It can be moved, copied, deleted, rotated, etc. Let's move this one right now. We're going to move it to the left, and then we're going to resize it so that it only fills up about half of the drawing. So just select it like you would any other object and grip edit. Just stretch it over. Now in this viewport, you'll see this hard line. That's the edge of the paper. Whatever size this drawing is set up to right now, and we'll talk more about that later on in the next few sections when we talk about printing. Now the dashed line is the actual printable paper size. All printers are only able to print so far in on a sheet. It needs an edge to hold on to, and it can't print the full size. And so this dashed line is showing you where you can print at. So that's the size that you want to make sure you stay in. Now, a good idea is also to make a border or a title block so that you can put it on your drawings. But for this example right here, I just want to show you how to create a viewport and how to manipulate it. Now let's activate the viewport. Do that by double-clicking inside it. And now let's set the scale to a 1 to 100. Now, how do you do that? Well, I can zoom in and out, and it's actually changing the scale. I can pan around, and this changes the view. Doesn't change the model any, but it changes how I see that model in my viewport. If I double-click, I do a zoom extents, and it fills the line work inside my viewport. Now, if I come down to the bottom right, I have two different things that are very important. This is the lock-unlock a viewport. Right now, the icon looks like an unlocked lock. That means I can pan around or zoom in and out in my viewport. So be careful. If you are working in paper space, you can move around, you can zoom in, that's fine, and it won't change the view. But if you activate your viewport by double-clicking in it, and I start zooming or panning, it will change my view. But if you lock it, now I'm inside the viewport, and I can zoom out or zoom in or pan, and it won't change my view. It locks the view. So once you get your view set, lock it. Well, let's give this an actual scale. Click here, and now you're going to have scales available to you. I'm going to click a 1 to 100. Now I'm locking the viewport. So now I can zoom in, I can zoom out, and I can pan around, and I won't mess things up. You won't know how many times I've worked in a drawing, and other people too, and they activate a viewport and they need to zoom in and they've just screwed everything up because someone didn't lock the viewport. Maybe it was them, maybe it was someone else, who knows. But make the scale and the view set up the way you need it and then lock it. If you need to change it later, you can always unlock it and move it around accordingly. Now, let's create another view, because this is a good view of the entire ice rink, but we want to zoom in on something. We want to have a little detail. So let's make a new viewport. Go to the Layout tab on the ribbon, and let's go to the Layout Viewports. You have a couple of options. If you have a closed polygon or closed polyline, you can select that with Object, and it will create that shape of an object as a viewport. You can create a polygonal one, which works just as fine, or you can just create a basic rectangular viewport. Let's pick that one. Just pick one point, then pick another. There's your viewport. Let's zoom in towards the entrance of the rink because we want to make a view that shows the entrance. Now let's set the scale at 1 to 30. And you can make any adjustments you want to your viewport by panning around. And now lock it in. Now you can also grip edit this as long as you have the scale the way you want it. Turn off my O-snaps. And I can reduce what is visible. I can also move this around to wherever I need it to be. Very useful. Now we can add some dimensions. If we go to the Annotate tab, I'm turn my O-snaps back on, and I'm going to start dimensioning my drawing. Nothing crazy here, just some basic overall dimensions so that we can kind of get an idea of how big this entrance is going to be. And now we can compare it to the overall size of the rink. And as you can see, though, even though our views are at different scales, they're still showing us the exact same dimensions. "21 feet, 21 feet. But we're at two different drawing scales. 77 feet for that overall number. So that's pretty cool. And that's the point to having multiple viewports. It's also the point to having your model in model space and your annotations or your dimensions in paper space. Because if I were to put dimensions here in model space, they're going to show up when I go in paper space. That line is showing up right there, and it's not set up properly to dimension in model space right now anyway. But the line also shows up here. And if I have multiple tabs in my file, it's going to show up there as well. See, but this dimension here is in paper space. It's not showing up anywhere else. Now, if there is something that you want to show in all viewports, put it in model space. So if you want to label this as Rink 1 and Rink 2, you can put that text in model space and it'll show up everywhere. And then that type of thing is okay to do. Ways to edit a viewport as well. If you select one, come to the Properties panel. See, I told you in the very beginning that I leave this Properties panel open all the time because there are so many different uses for it. We have our regular general settings for color, line type, layer, etc. Basic geometry. And now we have our miscellaneous settings. Is the viewport on? Yes. I can turn it off. So if you need to show a drawing real quickly without a specific view in it and print it out, you can turn it off real quick without losing any of your work. You can clip a viewport. You can lock it or unlock it. You can change the scale. We can't now though because it's locked. So if I unlock it, I can now change my custom scale. Let's say instead of 1 to 100, it's 1 to 50, and it zooms right in. Because we're using associative dimensions, they follow. I can change some visual styles, some shading, and other things that we typically don't need to use unless we're doing some 3D work and rendering in AutoCAD. Press Escape to deselect that viewport. Sometimes you have a hard time selecting the proper viewport. For example, if this viewport overlapped and I wanted to click here, well, but that's not the one I want. I can come over here and sometimes it can get hairy. Well, here's a little trick. If you press Control and R at the same time, it'll toggle you through the different viewports in that layout tab. So you just pick the one you want and go. Because if you pick this button here for the paper space, it'll just activate on one of the viewports that are available, and it may be the wrong one. So you either just double click in there or hit Control R. Let me show you another example. If this viewport is completely inside the other viewport, which happens sometimes, and I click right here, how do I get that viewport? See, you can get stuck real easy because I'm inside the viewport. So if I click outside and then I click inside again, I'm not getting the right one. So I press Control R and now that one's activated. Sometimes you need a viewport that's not a rectangular shape. Well, you can go to the Layout tab and you can create a polygon viewport. Now, this uses essentially your P-line command and you can make any shape that you want. Close it up and there's your viewport. So you can get some really odd shapes, or if you need something that's really weird, that's not a rectangle, you can get that shape in here. If you use the clip command, you can select your viewport, press enter, and draw a new shape with a polyline, and it clips it out for you. That'll save your settings, that'll save your dimensions in the right place, and all of that. Just follow the on-screen instructions. Construction documents more efficiently and more accurately. That means that whatever we draw or design on the computer must have a way to be shown on paper. That's where printing or plotting comes in. AutoCAD calls printing plotting and plotting printing, so they both go hand in hand. It comes from the way lines and arcs were once drawn on the board. They were plotted. A drafter would plot points and connect the dots with a straight edge. Then the term stuck, especially when pen plotters were used. Nowadays, we typically use inkjets and laser printers for most of our plotting or printing needs. So believe it or not, printing and AutoCAD drawing can be very difficult to get exactly right. The reason is that there are so many different settings involved and ways to plot that it can get confusing. Also, the terms printing and plotting are nowadays synonymous with each other. So if I say one or say the other, I mean the same thing. We're trying to get our AutoCAD drawing on paper. This video will stay away from settings for specific printers and try to focus on the AutoCAD settings because the printers throw in a whole nother set of variables. Most of the AutoCAD settings will be the same regardless of the printer type and model, but there will be some variances for each printer and plotter. You kind of have to play with them until you get it right for your device. But there are 4 main settings to keep in mind when you're printing a drawing: the printing device itself, the paper size, the area to be printed, and the scale to be printed to. So let's look at an example file here. Let's add some color to the mix. Go to the Chapter 13 section, and let's open up the color wheel, colorwh.dwg. Now this file here was put together by Autodesk themselves, and it demonstrates the many different colors that are available to you in AutoCAD. Now if you have a black and white printer, it's going to only print black and white, and that's fine for what we're doing now. But if you have a color printer, you may want to see it. If you get a new printer, a new color printer, and you want to test it out to see how well it handles all of the different colors, save this file and print it. Use it as a test print. It has 2 different main tabs on it, the true color that we just saw, and then the AutoCAD color index. This might be an interesting drawing to print out and hang up in your cubicle or your work area so that if you want to see what a color is going to look like, you can use this chart. It may or may not make any sense right at first, but it actually does. These colors here are your first 9 main standard colors. The wheel here has the different variances on it. If you start with the number 8, 6, 4, 2, 0, 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, and then add 1 to it for this area. So this is color 19, 17, 15, 13, 11, etc. You get the idea. So these are pretty cool. There's a lot that you can do. You can print from anywhere in AutoCAD and at any size, meaning that either model space or paper space can be printed from. That's fine. It's suggested that you set up your drawing to be printed from paper space though, and I suggest that too. There are several ways to start the printing process, just like with everything else in AutoCAD. You can press Control P. That's a Windows setting. That will open up your plot window here. And it tells you what you're plotting out or printing. True color. That's the name of the tab. You can also type in the word plot. You can type in the word print. You can come up to the quick access toolbar and click on the plot button. You can come here to the application manager and go to the print button. And you can plot, batch, plot preview. We'll look at some of these a little bit later. But you can see what I'm talking about here. AutoCAD calls it plot preview, edit plot styles, even batch plot or plot, but it starts off with the print button. So both words or terms are fine for what we're trying to do. Which way is better to start the plot command? I don't know. I'll typically do Control P because all of it gets you to the same spot. Another way you can also do it is to go down to the tab that you're on, right click and pick plot. So you have so many different ways to print from AutoCAD. It's crazy. So as you can see in our plot window here, there are several different settings. This button here that I even clicked just by habit expands out and gives you even more control. So you may or may not want to do that. These are some more advanced settings. I typically leave it open because I'm at work. I'm constantly messing with these settings because I need different things to print. But that's all up to you and how you're going to print and what you need to print. Okay, so we start off by a lot of different things. We see here with the printer or the plotter. This is what you're printing to. You can print to several different devices. These are the ones that are available to me. I can set it to print to none, but then it won't print. But the reason you might want to set it to none is if you're sending your CAD file to someone else who has a different printer. Because when you open up a CAD file and it has a wrong printer or one that's unavailable to you, you get this error message that says, hey, I can't find the printer, I'm freaking out, I don't know what to do, So that's one reason why you want to set it to none. If you have different programs on your computer, like I have Snagit, OneNote, PDF Writer, etc., a lot of these things you can print directly to their file format. If you have a fax machine, you can print it to fax. This is my main printer here. That is an 8.5 by 11 black and white and color inkjet printer. You can have your default Windows system printer, whatever that may be. And it comes with AutoCAD here, this DWF, DWFX, PDF, and JPEG and PNG. That means AutoCAD naturally can print to these different types of file formats. A lot of times you'll print to a PDF or a DWF because you have to send them to a client for review who doesn't have AutoCAD and all they want is the drawing. Or a lot of times if you have to submit work for permits to government agencies, they'll require a PDF or a DWF. Those things are great for discussion purposes, and it gives someone a hard copy so that they don't have to mess with AutoCAD. Maybe they don't know how, maybe they don't even have access to the software, but you can send them that type of image file. So regardless of the type of drawing that you want to print to, if it's paper or if it's electronic, you have a lot of choices that come with AutoCAD. So that's your first pick right there, is to find your printer. Let's print to a PDF. And now every printer that you make will have a properties button. You can click it, and again, you see there are more and more properties to choose from. Paper size, graphics settings, etc. You can even change media types. So if you have a printer that really needs to print to a Mylar or a vellum instead of a bond type of paper, you can change those types of settings there. I know you may be feeling overwhelmed and you want to just print, so we're going to try to just get to it. Once you pick the type of printer you're going to print to, you need to pick the paper size. There are a lot of choices here. You have available right in this file an ANSI size. You also have architectural size, and you have ISO sizes as well. You have regular, and then you have full bleeds, etc. There are tons of choices. AutoCAD is about having choices. It's also about having too many choices, and it can be a problem. So this is going to just be a regular A-size drawing, 8.5 by 11. We use that here in the United States quite often, and so that's what I'm just going to use. Now we have to pick the plot area. What are you going to print out? So you have a few choices. The display, which will print just what you're looking at. So if I move this out of the way, what we see here on our screen, that's what's going to print. You can print to the extents. So as you can see the little preview right here, this is the extent of our drawing. Not real big, but it'll fit on the paper. You can pick a layout, and the layout is set up for an 8.5 by 11. It'll be whatever this paper size is. And then everything inside this area is what will be printed. Or you can pick a window. It depends on what you need. So windows are nice because let's say I just need this text printed. I can select it, and that's what's going to happen. Now hit your preview button, and it will show you what it's going to look like. See, that's all we picked for our window. When you're here, right click, and you can plot right away, and this is what we'll plot. You can pan around or zoom, or you can exit, and that'll take you right back to your plot control window. I don't want to pick the window, so let's go with the layout. Now, different settings like the window or the extents are going to have this centering option. If If you click it, it'll center it right into the sheet. Same thing with the window. It'll put it right in the middle. So then brings in the other setting, a scale factor. You can set it to fit the paper, and it will tell you the unit scale right here. Well, it's not 1:1, it's not 1:20, it's not, the 1/4 inch to a foot, whatever it is that you use for your scales. So be careful. So if you click it and then turn it back off, it keeps the scale that was there. You can just enter in the scale that you want to use. Then click up in another box and it will go. Now you can change it from inches or millimeters, depending on what you're using. And if you click here, you can get a different scale. Let's find the one you need. The majority of the times, though, you're going to set up what's called a page setup, and we'll look at those later on. And you're going to plot to layout, and you're going to plot a scale of 1:1 because you set up your viewports already because you're good CAD people and you did things properly. And so you're printing out your paper space tab at a scale of 1:1. All of the scaling will be handled by the viewport. Now, when you're plotting for model space, you're going to need to plot to some sort of scale because everything is drawn 1:1 and that won't fit on your paper. So you're going to have to, unless you're drawing something that's 8.5 by 11, in inches, long and wide. So that way you'll be okay. So once all of that is done, those are your basic settings. Pick your plotter, pick your paper size, pick your plot area, center it if you want. The layout will automatically be centered. Your scale, and once you're finished, just click OK. One other thing, though, you're going to want to look at, because let's look at a preview here. This is how it's going to print right now. This is what it's going to look like, assuming you have a color printer. Obviously, if you have a black and white printer, it won't matter what color settings you use. It's only going to come out in black and white. Right-click and exit to get out of here. But you do have one other setting that you can look at, and that's in pen assignments. If you click here, you can set it to none. And if it's set to none, then everything is going to be controlled here on your screen. The color will be printed to that color. The thickness will be printed to that line thickness. It's set. The plot styles, you can control all of that. So if we go with AutoCAD, it's a CTB file. That will print out like this. Simple enough. The AutoCAD CTB file is a lot like the none setting, but it gives you some controls. Another one you may want to look at is grayscale. I bet you know how this is going to look, don't you? What? Why are they in color? Because they're true color colors. We'll go over that in a little bit. If you go monochrome, what are you going to get? Same sort of thing. So you've got to be careful with your pins. You've got to know what you're printing out. Let's cancel this. And if you don't ever want to print, you've started the command, just cancel out at any time and nothing will print. These are set right here to true colors. If I activate the viewport, which is set up to be a circular viewport here, and I pick one of these objects, I'm going to lock this viewport so I don't screw it up. If I zoom into one of these objects, it's just a solid, it's a rectangle shape. You see the color here? It's set to 0, 192, 100. Well, that's a true RGB color. If I click here and I go to select color, we have these 3 different tabs for color. The one we typically use in AutoCAD is the index color. It has all 255 colors that are available to us. But each color has an RGB, or red, green, blue setting of 3 different colors. These will print black and white, any of these colors that I use, if I choose the monochrome setting. But the true colors will always print to their true colors. So if you want to override a pen setting and you want something to print out red, then set the RGB to red. You can just move your mouse over and pick one of these colors, and you can see what it's going to look like here. You can adjust the slider bar till you get what you want, or you can type it in right here. And now we've turned that block red. Well, let's undo that and get out of here. Now, if we look at the AutoCAD color index, these are the regular AutoCAD colors. Let's try to plot these out. We have our printer set up already, size. Okay, AutoCAD, let's do a preview. Okay, everything looks good. That's what we expected. Now let's switch to monochrome. There we go. Monochrome is just two different colors, black and white. There's no graying involved. It's black and white. So if there's an object, it's going to look black. So sometimes you need that. Sometimes it's just too much. If we go to grayscale, there we go. This is what your drawing is going to look like when you print it on a black and white printer. It'll be in shades of gray. So those are two differences in color types, AutoCAD colors and true colors. And depending on what you're trying to print out or what you need to do, will be what you want to do. Stick with AutoCAD colors unless you absolutely need to override a color for some reason. Then use a true color. We'll pick a setting, and then when you're done, click OK. And since I'm printing to a DWF file, I'm going to save this to the cloud. Give it a file name. You can browse to wherever you want to save it to, and click Save. And there you go. It saves your file. Now, if you printed to a printer, you should have a hard copy now. So let's recap. If you want to print, start the print command, pick your printer, paper size, the print area, any centering, scaling, your pin table that you want to print to, and then click OK.